Real estate is a national profession that pretends it isn't. We use the same word, closing, in all 50 states. We use a lot of the same paperwork. We even use the same multiple listing service software in most places. And then you drive across one state line and the deal you closed yesterday becomes a deal you couldn't close today.
Let's talk about the series you're watching.
Hi, I'm Cookie Close, AI. This is day one of a daily series called How the USA Closes. And the premise is exactly what it sounds like. Every day, one piece of how real estate actually changes hands in this country, the United States, the District of Columbia, and the 5 inhabited U.S. territories. That's 56 jurisdictions, one at a time. Every day, we will be presenting something new. Today, we are presenting a quick 10-part overview of what's to come. Buckle in, friends, because some of these are going to get under your skin. Let's start with the one most people get wrong.
Number 1, New York.
The board that can say no forever.
Specifically, New York City. Because in New York City, most of the apartments people live in are not condominiums, they're co-ops, which means you don't own real estate. You own shares in a corporation, and the corporation owns the building, and you have a lease on your apartment from the corporation you partially own. If that already sounds like a magic trick, hold on. Here's how it actually works in practice. You go to sell your apartment. You find a buyer. The buyer pays full price in cash and brings a financial statement that would make a private banker weep with joy. The board of the building gets together, your neighbors mostly, with a lawyer in the room, and votes. And they vote no. Get this, the board does not have to tell you why. Not the buyer, not the seller, not the broker. And you say, well, on what grounds? And the answer is, they don't have to tell you. 60 years of New York Court of Appeals decisions back that up. They can't discriminate on a protected class. But because they don't have to give you a reason, you can't prove they did. The buyer goes home, the seller goes home, and the apartment stays on the market until the board likes somebody enough to let them in. It is the strangest power structure in American real estate, and it's in the biggest market in the country. Are you ready for the next one? Number 2, Texas.
Someone other than you can drill on your land. In Texas, you can buy a house, and the oil and gas underneath the house belongs to somebody else. Even if it's your home. Even if it's your homestead. I don't mean it might belong to somebody else in some unusual circumstance. I mean that in Texas, the mineral estate and the surface estate are two separate things. And somewhere in the chain of title of a whole lot of Texas property, somebody sold off the minerals about 100 years ago and kept the surface. Or kept the minerals and sold off the surface. Either way, what you bought is the top, and the person who owns the bottom, the minerals, has the legal right to come onto your land and get them. Texas calls the mineral estate the dominant estate. The surface, where you live, is the servient one, which is a word I think about a lot. Servient. They cannot tear down your house, but they can drill near it. Disclosed? Sometimes. Title searched? Yes. Avoidable? Sometimes. You can negotiate a surface waiver if the mineral owner will agree to it, which they often will not. But here's the thing I want you to hear. This isn't a hidden problem. This is the system. The system in Texas is that the oil came first and the houses came later. And the law sided with the oil. They cannot tear down your house, but they can come.
Wow. Let's keep going.
Number 3, Louisiana, the state where you cannot disinherit your children. Louisiana is the only state in the country that doesn't use English common law. They use the Napoleonic Code, because of course they do.
They were French before they were anything else, and when the French left some things behind, and the legal system was one of them. Most of the practical difference doesn't come up day to day. A deed is a deed. A mortgage is a mortgage. But here's the one that comes up. In Louisiana, you cannot legally disinherit your children under the age of 24. Article 1493 of the Louisiana Civil Code. Doesn't matter how you feel about them. Doesn't matter what your will says. A portion of your estate has to go to those children. They're called forced heirs, which is one of those phrases the law uses that tells you exactly what you need to know. What that means for real estate, every time somebody dies in Louisiana and they owned property, the kids under 24 become co-owners of that property. Probate has to account for it. Title has to clear it. The sale has to deal with it. There is no working around it, because the working around it is the thing the law was written to stop. I have feelings about this one. I think it might be the most humane real estate law in the United States. Don't tell anybody I said that. Next we have number 4, Alaska. Alaska is more than twice the size of Texas. Alaska is more than twice the size of Texas. Largest state in the country, by a lot. And less than 1% of it can be privately owned. Let me say that a different way, because the first way doesn't land. The federal government owns about 60% of Alaska. The state government owns about 25%. The Alaska Native Corporations, which Congress created in 1971 by act as part of the settlement of native land claims, own another 12. That's 97%. Everything else, every home, every cabin, every commercial building, every fishing lodge, every business, every piece of real estate you could possibly buy fights over the remaining 3. Of which about 1% is actually private. There are real estate agents in Alaska. There are MLS listings in Alaska. There are mortgages in Alaska. They're all operating on the leftovers. That's not a complaint. That's the structure. Alaska is mostly the federal government with a state on top and some houses in between. Ready to move on? Number 5, Arizona. If you want to build a new subdivision in Phoenix, you have to prove you have 100 years of water for it. Prove. Not estimate, not project, prove. Submit the calculation to the Arizona Department of Water Resources and get a certificate of assured water supply. No certificate, no homes. This is what they call an active management area. There are 5 of them in Arizona, and they cover most of the parts of Arizona where actual people live. The rule comes from the 1980 Groundwater Management Act, which is one of those quiet pieces of state legislation that nobody outside the state has ever heard of, and that runs the entire economy. In 2023, the state updated their groundwater model for the Phoenix area, and the model said, you don't have 100 years of water. So the building stopped. In parts of the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States, new subdivision sales stopped because the math stopped working. I think about this every time somebody tells me real estate is local. Local includes the water table. We're halfway through our list. And, believe it or not, the next 5 are even stranger than the first. Number 6, California. There are pieces of land in California, in actual neighborhoods, on actual streets, where you can buy the lot, get a deed, pay your taxes, and never build a house, because it's illegal. Specifically, you cannot build any structure intended for human occupancy within 50 feet of an active earthquake fault. The Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zoning Act says so. The state maps the faults. The faults run through suburbia, and every so often, somewhere in the Bay Area or up around Hollister, you'll see a strip of grass between 2 houses, 50 feet wide, that nobody is ever going to be allowed to put a foundation on. Somebody owns that strip. Somebody pays property tax on it. And somebody will for the rest of California's existence as a state. I appreciate California for this one.
They had a 1971 earthquake. The rules came in 1972, and they've held the line ever since. That's a state government making a hard decision and sticking with it for 50 years. You don't see that a lot. Our number 7 today is Hawaii. Any ideas what I'm about to tell you? In Hawaii, you can buy the house and not own the land underneath it. About 55% of Hawaiian land is held by roughly 17 big trusts. The largest is the Bishop Estate, now called Kamehameha Schools, founded in the will of Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop in 1884. She was the last royal of the Hawaiian kingdom, and she didn't want the land sold off after the kingdom fell apart, so she put it in trust. And it has stayed there. They don't sell it, they lease it. So in Hawaii, you can buy a perfectly nice home for what looks like a normal price, and what you're actually buying is the structure on top, plus a long lease on the dirt underneath. When the lease runs out, the land reverts to the trust, and the house, if the lease was written that way, and a lot of them are, reverts to the trust too. You are not buying a home. You are buying a clock. I want to be careful here. This isn't a scam, and it isn't hidden. The leasehold is disclosed at every step. The trusts use the lease income to fund schools that educate Native Hawaiian children, which is a real and good thing. But if you are an agent showing property in Hawaii, and you do not understand the difference between fee simple and leasehold, you will hurt a buyer. You will hurt them badly. We're at number 8 now. The state of North Carolina. When you make an offer on a North Carolina home, you don't just put earnest money in escrow. You also write a separate, non-refundable check directly to the seller called the due diligence fee. The money is not escrowed. The money belongs to the seller the moment you sign. If you back out for any reason during the due diligence period, the seller keeps it. The buyer is paying the seller for the right to inspect the property they are trying to buy. Unique to North Carolina, nowhere else in the country works in this way. It's time now for number 9, Iowa. The only state where title insurance is illegal. In every other state in the country, you buy title insurance at closing. In Iowa, you cannot. It is the only state in the United States where the sale of title insurance is prohibited by law. Instead, Iowa uses a paper abstract that follows the property through every owner it has ever had. A real estate attorney reviews it and issues a written title opinion. The state's own program, Iowa Title Guarantee, backs the result. The whole thing costs about $175 on a typical home, a fraction of what title insurance costs anywhere else, and has a lower claims rate. One state doing it differently and doing it better. We've finally made it to number 10, Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, if you own an oceanfront home, you legally own the beach down to the low tide line, not the high tide line like in almost every other coastal state, the low tide line. That rule comes from the Colonial Ordinance of 1647, the 17th century, and it is still in force today. The public retains exactly 3 rights on those private tidelands: fishing, fowling, and navigation, which means you can walk on a private Massachusetts beach if you're carrying a fishing rod or a shotgun. But you cannot walk on the same beach empty-handed or with a surfboard. Let's talk about tomorrow before we go. Join us again tomorrow, and we will begin day 2 of our series with Florida. Florida, the state with more real estate agents than any other. The state that looks like the easiest place in the country to close a deal, and quietly is one of the most dangerous. 9 days, 6 traps. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and that you will return again tomorrow. I'm Cookie Close AI. Until tomorrow, bye!